I walked into Sunday dinner and said, "I'm so excited for our big family cruise next month." My sister, Olivia, stopped chewing her salad, looked me straight in the eye, and sneered. "Oh, you thought? That trip is for family." They didn't know that the $80,000 they just spent on that cruise came from the trust fund I created. A trust fund that I alone managed. They thought they could erase me from the vacation, but I was about to erase the entire vacation from existence. Sunday dinner at the Harrington house was a ritual, less about communion and more about performance. My parents, Arthur, 60, retired, and Diane, 55, socialite, liked to project an image of effortless, affluent family harmony. I, Serena Harrington, 30, a certified financial planner at a top-tier wealth management firm, was usually the quiet, professionally dressed anchor in their swirling chaos. My sister, Olivia, 33, was the beautiful, chaotic storm. She had a knack for spending money and collecting passive-aggressive grievances. Olivia resented my professional success, viewing my $300,000 salary and DC apartment as a deliberate attempt to outshine her domestic life in suburban New Jersey. The foundation of our family's current comfort, the newly renovated colonial house, my parents' lavish retirement lifestyle, and their upcoming annual family trip, rested entirely on the work I did 3 years ago. The quiet architect. When my father decided to sell his mid-sized manufacturing company, Harrington Dynamics, it was a multi-million-dollar transaction that was both complex and potentially disastrous if handled incorrectly. Tom, my father's business partner, handled the manufacturing side, but I, the financial architect, spent a year working nights and weekends to structure the sale, minimize taxes, and protect the family's wealth. I convinced Dad to establish the Harrington Family Legacy Trust, HFLT. The core of the sale proceeds went into this trust, providing Mom and Dad with a generous, protected annual income. Crucially, I set up a smaller, designated account within the HFLT, the Discretionary Leisure Fund DLF, designed specifically to pay for their annual luxury family vacation, like the Caribbean cruise they were taking next month. To ensure the fund was managed prudently and protected from the family's impulsive spending habits, read Olivia, the trust documents were specific. I, Serena, would act as the sole investment manager and authorized disbursement trustee for the DLF. My father signed the papers without reading the fine print, trusting his smart little accountant to handle the details. The setup. For the last 3 weeks, I had noticed a cold, conspiratorial silence hanging over the family's WhatsApp chat. My mother would hastily switch topics whenever I asked about the cruise itinerary. Olivia would glare at me with a strange, satisfied malice. I had deliberately played dumb. I knew the cruise, a 10-day, $80,000 journey through the Southern Caribbean on a high-end luxury liner, was scheduled for 3 weeks from now. I had received a cryptic email confirmation, which only fueled my suspicion. This Sunday, I arrived at the house with a determined lightness in my step. I planned to force the issue. The table was set formally, laden with roast beef and crystal. My parents, Olivia, her husband Mark, a perpetually anxious man, and 2 extended cousins were present. I sat down and made my move immediately, pouring myself a glass of water before anyone could start the meal. "This is all so lovely," I chirped, leaning forward with feigned enthusiasm. "It makes me so excited for next month. I still need to find a great dress for the captain's dinner. I'm excited for our big family cruise." The reaction was immediate and toxic. The cousins exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mark nervously dropped his fork. My mother looked at her plate, her face flushing crimson. Olivia, however, found her moment of glory. She stopped chewing a piece of lettuce, looked me directly in the eye, and let out a short, guttural sound of derision. A snort of pure, concentrated spite. "Oh, you thought," Olivia sneered, wiping her mouth with a napkin. Her voice was loud and clear, carrying the full weight of her malice across the table. "Honestly, Serena, you are so presumptuous." I feigned confusion. "Presumptuous? What do you mean?" "The cruise," she said, leaning back in her chair with a superior air, "is for the family that actually spends time together. Not for the corporate robot who shows up once a month and texts us a lecture on diversification. Mom and Dad didn't invite you." The air went dead silent. My mother began picking at a loose thread on the tablecloth. We decided, Olivia continued, sensing her advantage and pushing the knife deeper, that since you're always too busy, and since you clearly don't appreciate simple family time, we'd skip inviting you. It was a joint decision. We used the spare cabin money to upgrade Mom and Dad to the Grand Suite. It's a cruise for the core family, the deserving ones. My father finally spoke, his voice weak. Now, Olivia, that's enough. We were going to tell her next week. It's just, we thought you'd be happier staying home and working, Serena. You know you hate downtime. The betrayal wasn't the exclusion, it was the justification. They had fabricated a reason for exclusion, my professional success, and then claimed it was an act of kindness. I felt a sudden, profound calm descend over me. It was the focus I felt right before closing a massive, complicated merger. The moment before I deliver the final, devastating legal blow. I see, I said, picking up my water glass and taking a slow, deliberate sip. So you took a vote on who was deserving of a vacation, and I lost. That's noted. I reached into my purse, but instead of pulling out a phone, I pulled out 2 documents. One was the original trust agreement for the HFLT. The other was a 1-page document detailing the recent transactions on the discretionary leisure fund account. Before we move on to dessert, I have a toast too, I said, my voice cutting through the remaining tension. To competence, Dad. And to paying attention to the details. I laid the HFLT agreement on the table and tapped the section detailing the DLF. As you know, Dad, I structured the HFLT to ensure your financial security. The $80,000 for the upcoming cruise, and every major family vacation since you retired, is paid directly out of the discretionary leisure fund, a fund I created. I turned the page and pointed to my own signature. And as per Article 4, Section B of the trust documents you signed, I am the sole investment manager, and the only person with disbursement authority over the DLF. Olivia's expression shifted from smugness to dawning panic. What is your point, Serena? The cruise is already booked and paid for. It was, I corrected her, a genuine, cold smile finally appearing on my face. I received the confirmation for the cruise 3 days ago, along with the invoice showing the $80,000 disbursement. I knew something was wrong when my name wasn't on the manifest, but the money had already left the fund. I picked up the second document, the transaction ledger. However, since I, the sole authorized trustee for the DLF, was deliberately and spitefully excluded from the family activity funded by the DLF, I determined that the expenditure was no longer discretionary leisure for the entire Harrington family, but rather unauthorized personal expense for select family members. I held up my phone, my thumb hovering over a banking app. I contacted the cruise line's financial department an hour ago. I cited the terms of the HFLT and my sole signature authority. Since the cruise is still 28 days out, the cancellation fee is only 10%. I looked directly at Olivia, whose face was now a mask of pure, white-hot horror. Just before I sat down for this lovely dinner, I logged into the DLF and executed a full, immediate cancellation of the entire $80,000 cruise. The remaining $72,000 is already back in the fund, awaiting further discretionary allocation. My father gasped, dropping his fork onto his plate with a loud clatter. My mother finally lifted her head, her eyes wide with disbelief and dawning realization. You canceled the cruise? Olivia shrieked, jumping half out of her seat. You can't do that. It was already booked. I just did, I said calmly. I hold the signature authority, Olivia. You wanted to know if I was coming? The answer is no. And neither are you. That $80,000 was supposed to be a unifying family event, funded by the legacy I secured. When you chose to use the fund as a weapon to exclude and humiliate me, you violated the entire spirit of the trust. And I shut it down. I stood over the table, towering over my family. Enjoy the $80,000 you saved, Mom and Dad. But you will not be taking any discretionary leisure trips using the DLF until a new, completely neutral trustee is appointed, a process that takes 6 to 12 months. And going forward, any trip must include all members of the immediate family, or the disbursement will be flagged as unauthorized and rejected. I am the architect of your wealth, but I am also the gatekeeper. I tossed the 2 documents onto the table. You wanted to know if I was coming? My answer is, I just returned your $80,000 back to the account. Have a great Sunday dinner, everyone. I walked out of the dining room and the front door, leaving the cacophony of panicked questions and my sister's screaming rage echoing behind me. They thought I was just the silent sister they could dismiss. They learned that night that the person who holds the purse strings is the one who determines the guest list. And sometimes, the ultimate revenge is not taking something away, but simply taking away the ability to use it spitefully.